I'm calling the Labour government wet and whiny. There's nothing wrong with New Zealand or New Zealanders. This is the best country on planet Earth, but we have endless potential. But this is a government taking us backwards on every single dimension that you can look at. And that's why I'm saying change is coming. You're going to get a positive, aspirational, ambitious, national-led government that's going to go out in the world and make sure that New Zealand has a great future in the next 50 years, which it can do and will do. But this government blames everybody else other than itself for its poor results and poor performance. But let's be clear, we've had a government that has actually taken New Zealanders and New Zealand backwards. And we're going to have a government, a national government that's going to have ambition and aspiration and positivity and optimism about our future. And we've got to get this country turned around, and we have to get it back on track. Our economy's going backwards. Our law and order situation's getting worse. We're seeing education, failed rates on academic achievement and attendance. We've got a healthcare system falling apart. And this government, for the last 6 years, is the reason for why New Zealand has gone backwards when the rest of the world's moving ahead. So I am a big patriotic Kiwi in New Zealand. I came back to this country. I've taken on this job and come to this job 2 years ago because that's how I feel, that we are not realising our potential. We are not solving our problems. We are not optimising the opportunities that we have, and we're not getting things done. And my government will be a turnaround government that gets New Zealand's mojo back and gets its positivity, ambition and aspiration back. This Labour government is blaming everybody else for its problems and not delivering for New Zealanders. It blames COVID for why we have a terrible set of economic mismanagement that's causing huge pain and suffering for New Zealanders. It blames everyone else but itself for actually causing the problems that we've got on education. Chris Hipkins was the education minister for 5.5 years. He spent $5 billion, hired 1,400 more bureaucrats, and got worse attendance and worse academic achievement. And yet he wants to blame lots of other people. Chris Hipkins was the education minister who put 16 polytechnics together, spent $200 million doing it, and now we have 10% less enrolments, 80% of staff wanting to leave. What has been incredibly worrying is that we have 50,000 more New Zealanders on unemployment benefit under this government. 50,000 more people on unemployment when we actually have worker shortages and we have low unemployment. And so that's the best thing we could do, is get our people off welfare and into work and set up for a much better life and a better future. And importantly, we've got to stop sending Kiwis overseas. And when Chris Hipkins takes $10,000 of taxpayer money and advertises to Kiwis living in Australia saying, congratulations, here's a pathway to Australian citizenship, proudly brought to you by the New Zealand government, it says to me he's not doing his job. You need to fight for New Zealand to make this the place of opportunity, that young people feel, I can start a business, I can raise a family, I can make a contribution in my community. We are amongst the most efficient farmers in the world, and we are not moving production out of New Zealand and making New Zealanders poorer by moving it to another country. And we're not improving global greenhouse gas emissions either by doing so. We have a fantastic industry in agriculture. I think, again, the government has blamed farmers as part of their drive into identity politics, pitched farmers against urban folk, treated them as villains, and actually farmers are deeply valued. It's a sector we should be incredibly proud about. And that's the message that I've got from farmers, is they feel beat up, they feel like they're treated as villains. It's not good enough. We should value farming. As I said yesterday, it generates 11% of our economy, 13% of our employment, 80% of our exports, and it certainly generates $10,000 for every man, woman and child in this country. And New Zealand will be poorer if we don't support agriculture as a result. Farmers want to reduce their emissions on farm, but you have to give them the tools and the technologies to be able to do that. You have to give them the ability to be able to sequester carbon and be able to track that, as well as obviously introduce agricultural emissions pricing at some future point, as we said, at the latest by 2030. But farmers need to be able to have the tools and the technologies to be able to respond to that and to manage their emissions down before you actually introduce pricing. Otherwise, it's just a tax on farmers. And as I said yesterday, here's the dilemma. We have the most emissions-efficient farmers in the world. And at the same time, our farmers are the backbone of the New Zealand economy. And if you want to cull the herd and you want to shut down farming, all you're doing is moving that production that feeds 40 million people to a less emissions-efficient country with a less emissions farm, and you don't improve global greenhouse gas emissions. And all you're doing, on the other hand, is just destroying livelihoods, weakening the New Zealand economy and making every single Kiwi in this country infinitely poorer.